friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. So yesterday I binged the entire one and only season of Young Royals. This is a Netflix Swedish original. It was absolutely incredible. I was so obsessed with this show. I'm personally not a TV person, but when I heard about the show, it just really sounded up my alley. So I was like, I'm gonna check it out. I watched the first episode and I was just completely and utterly sucked in, engrossed, and blown away by how good this show was. So if you didn't know, this is basically Red, White, and Royal Blue, but make it Swedish. Where Red, White, and Royal Blue is definitely kind of like a fluffy romance and kind of doesn't take itself too seriously, this show is definitely a bit more serious. It has more of a darker tone to it. In this series, we're following a prince of Sweden. He is not like the crown prince. He's not first in line. He's actually second in line because he has an older brother. He gets into a bit of a scandal, gets in a little fight at the club, and gets a little roughed up. So his parents are like, you need to get yourself together, and they send him to this boarding school that lots of people in their family have gone to. It's pretty prestigious. He really doesn't want to go at first. He doesn't really have much of a choice, so he relents, and so we are following him as he kind of finds his footing at this boarding school, and there he meets this boy named Simone. He is like a townie. He doesn't board at the school. He's like a little bit lower class. Lots of the other kids pick on him and make fun of him, but our main character, his name is Willem, is fascinated with him and really wants to form a friendship with him because he's quite different. And eventually, despite the odds, that friendship turns into a little bit more, and this gets the prince into some tricky situations as the royal family doesn't want him to be gay. It's kind of a scandal, all of that stuff. You know, if you know, you know. So that's basically the premise of the show, and we're following Wilhelm and Simone's relationship. I guess his name is Simon, but they pronounce it like Simone, like in Swedish. I don't know. I digress. The show was incredible and I would so recommend that you watch it. It was everything I've ever wanted in a TV show. And now I have a huge void inside of my heart. And so I'm gonna try my best to fill that void in my heart with similar books, like books that have similar elements, plot lines to the show, because that's what I feel like I need. So before I get into what I'm going to be reading in this vlog to try and fill the void, I wanted to give you guys a couple of recommendations in case you have also watched this show, need to fill the void in your heart and want books or content that is similar. So I have 5 books here that I think you would really like if you really liked the show Young Royals. And naturally, we first have to begin by recommending Red, White, and Royal Blue. That's what everyone is comparing this show to, and I definitely see why. If you didn't know, this is a male-male new adult romance between the Prince of England and the first son of the United States. They kind of have a short, like, enemies to lovers kind of thing going on. It kind of is like more of enemies to friends to lovers. The enemies part's really short, but it's honestly kind of funny. There is the best banter in this book, the best friend group. This book is just like pure serotonin and makes me so happy, and the romance is so cute. And like I said, it's definitely a little bit fluffier than Young Royals, but if you liked Young Royals, you will definitely like Red, White, and Royal Blue, and vice versa. Something else that's definitely very similar is the Prince Charming plus Her Royal Highness kind of duology by Rachel Hawkins. As you can probably tell by the titles of these books, they definitely involve royalty, which is such a big theme of Young Royals. That's what it's about. So if you like reading romance books or consuming romance shows about royalty, these books are definitely for you. I will never stop hyping these books. I know I recommend them all the time, but nobody's listening to me and reading them, so please read them. But basically, this book follows the story of Daisy, and Daisy's sister is engaged to be married to a prince of Scotland. Once the news of this breaks, the media starts following Daisy around as well, so she kind of has to provide a good image for the royals as well, so she gets sent over to Scotland to kind of learn the ropes. So she goes over there and she actually ends up meeting someone. He's not directly royal, but he's like friends with them, and they have a really cute, like, funny romance. The banter in this is so good. Like, if you like good banter, this book is where it's at. This one's also quite a bit lighter than Young Royals, but it has romance, it's about royalty, it's really fun and cute, so I definitely would recommend, and I think it has a lot of similar elements. Her Royal Highness is also super similar, and I would say Her Royal Highness is actually more similar to Young Royals because it takes place at a boarding school, follows a princess of Scotland who goes to this elite boarding school out in the middle of the woods of Scotland, follows this American scholarship student who is also there. They hate each other at first, but figure out that they kind of might have more in common than they would have initially thought, and they end up having a cute little romance. This one's definitely a bit lighter. as well, but it kind of has the whole like class romance thing going on. Also the royalty, also the boarding school, also like the rich kids and being the outcast. So many similar themes to Young Royals. So honestly, I feel like this book is more similar to Young Royals than Red, White, and Royal Blue. So if you liked that show, definitely read this book. Another book I would recommend if you loved Young Royals is The Raven Boys. So this is one of my favorite YA series of all time. I love Maggie Stiefvater so much. And I feel like I don't talk about this book a lot on my channel because I read it quite a while ago, but it's still one of my all-time favorites. And I feel like it has very similar elements to Young Royals. For one, it's got this great cast of characters, this great friend group, just play off each other really well, which I feel like Young Royals has as well. We also have like a lot of class discussions in this book, plus a lot of the boys in this book go to this prestigious elite school. So we have that element in there as well. This also gives major dark academia vibes, which I kind of felt like Young Royals did as well. I felt like it took place at this boarding school, kind of had a dark tone. Nobody was really getting murdered, but there was definitely some shit going down. And there was like secret elite clubs and all of that stuff. So while they're not like exactly the same, I definitely think there's like romance, elite boarding school setting, good cast of characters, all of those good things. Plus there's like a gay romance in this, so that as well. So I feel like if you like one, you would most likely like the other. Now, this one may be a little bit out of left field, but hang with me, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. So like I mentioned a second ago, I feel like Young Royals definitely gave me dark academia vibes, and Bunny is like the epitome of dark academia. But I feel like what makes Bunny so interesting is there's like this elite club of girls. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, does this really even make sense? But I feel like if you like the elite school vibe of Young Royals and that kind of a setting, you would love Bunny because they both have that in there. And I feel like Young Royals is like a little bit weird and a little bit different than something that would come from like an American TV producer, you know? So I feel like weird vibes, dark academia setting, I don't know. I realized I have not given you a description for the past couple of books. So basically, Bunny follows this girl named Samantha who gets into this like elite private school in New England. Everything's kind of going fine for her, but then she gets drawn into the world of the bunnies, and this is like an elite club of girls who all call each other Bunny and are really weird and are doing some kind of like voodoo magic stuff. This makes sense in my head as a recommendation, but it's very hard for me to describe to you why, but just trust me. And then the final book I would recommend to you if you need to fill the void in your heart from Young Royals, not having a season 2 yet, I would check out Check Please by Ngozi Kazu. This is actually a graphic novel, which makes it really quick and easy to fly through. It's not necessarily got any like royalty or rich people problems, but it does follow this kid in college, and he lives in this like sports house with the hockey team. He's on the hockey team, has a romance with one of the other boys on the team, and it's just really sweet and cute. I loved it, and I feel like it has similar settings because we have like that school atmosphere where everyone's living together, everyone's in each other's business. We also have the romance element. Check Please is definitely fluffier than Young Royals, but I definitely feel like there's similar elements, so if you like one, you would probably like the other. Those are my recommendations to you. Now let me get into the books that I'm going to be reading in this vlog to try and fill the void in my heart. So when I was originally kind of like brainstorming books that I could read that would be similar to Young Royals, the first one that came to mind was Ace of Spades. I started this one a couple of months ago, and I don't know why I didn't keep going. Like, I really liked it. It was a little bit slow to get through in the beginning, but I think it's going to be amazing if I stick with it. I might actually start over just so I can get the full experience, but basically this takes place in an elite boarding school. It might just be a private school. I don't think it's a boarding school, but it's an elite private school. It was pitched as like Gossip Girl times like Get Out or something like that. It's a YA thriller. I think it's like psychological. It also has a lot of commentary on race, which I think will be super interesting, and I feel like Young Royals also had some social commentary in it, so I feel like that makes sense as well. But we're basically following these two main characters. One is like the most popular girl in school, and the other kid is not. I don't really remember. I think he is like the scholarship kid. There's somebody in the school that is blackmailing the two of them, and we don't know why they're blackmailing them or who it is, and we're trying to figure that out as the story goes. Our male main character is gay, so that's kind of like the secret that gets revealed about him. I don't really know exactly more than that. I'm super intrigued with this one. I think it'll have maybe some romance elements, dark academia vibes for sure, the elite boarding school, rich people problems, everything that makes Young Royals great, hopefully. So I'm hoping this one will fill the void. Another one I'm planning to read is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I've heard a lot of buzz about this one recently, and I feel like it definitely has similar vibes to Young Royals. I think it's set in an elite boarding school. I think it's gay. That's all I need to know. So, but basically this is more of a thriller like Ace of Spades, but it's set in a boarding school that's haunted by its history of witchcraft. It follows our main character Felicity, and she went to this boarding school, but she took a break for a while because her girlfriend actually tragically died, and now a year later she's back to graduate, and she's living in this dormitory that's supposedly haunted by these 5 girls who died there multiple years ago. They were said to be witches, and there's this new girl in school. Her name is Ellis. Felicity is really drawn to Ellis, and Ellis is really interested in like investigating what happened to these girls and how they actually died, and so I think that together they try and solve the mystery. I don't know if there's a romance between them or if it was just like in the past. I'm not really sure. Sapphic Dark Academia sounds perfect. Another one I'm planning to read, If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. This is more YA contemporary vibes, lighter and fluffier as far as I know, but I think it will have similar themes as well because it's set at prestigious Bexley School, and it kind of follows the story of these 4 friends that are pictured on the cover. Everyone believes that Charlie and Sage should end up together, but they don't like each other. Charlie actually likes Sage's brother, I believe, and there's also a new boy in school that Sage is drawn to or something. There's some kind of like mixed up love square going on, I believe. But I think we have the elite private school vibes. I think it's gay. Big cast of characters, friends, everyone interacting kind of in each other's business. So I feel like the vibes are there to be similar to Young Royals, so I'm hoping I'll like this one as well. We Contain Multitudes is another one I found on my shelf that I thought might help me out, fill the void. This is a story about these 2 boys who get paired together for this project in high school where they are like pen pals for a while and write letters to each other, but then they start to kind of like get closer, share secrets, and then have a little romance. I'm thinking like the school coming of age gay vibes will work. This one probably is like the least similar, but I feel like the romance might be what I need right now. And then last but not least, I'm planning to read A Separate Piece by John Knowles. This is an older classic, and I've like kind of been very conflicted about reading this one because I think that it has almost like queer baiting vibes where like it claims to be queer but it's not actually, or it's just kind of like a letdown in the queer department. I don't know. It definitely has very similar vibes to Young Royals according to the description on the back. It says set in a boys' boarding school in New England during the early wars of World War II. Separate Piece is a harrowing and luminous parable of the dark side of adolescence. Follows Jean, who is a lonely introverted intellectual. Phineas is a handsome, taunting daredevil athlete. What happens between the 2 friends one summer, like the war itself, banishes the innocence of these boys in their world. So boarding school, homoerotic relationships. Possible darker tones, which I think is interesting, and kind of also why I picked Ace of Spades and A Lesson in Vengeance, because I feel like they'll have that darker tone that I feel like Young Royals does have. The audiobook for this one is super short, it's only 6 hours long, so I should fly through this one. But yeah, I'm planning to read these books over the next couple of weeks, so I will keep you updated on what I think and whether or not they are adequately filling the void in my heart that Young Royals left. But that's all for now. Pray for season 2. If not for yourself, then for me, please. I'm begging you. Hey, what's up? My name is Jess. I'm 24 and I have bad fucking skin. Just kidding. Hi, vlog. Honestly, that's like one of my favorite vines. I don't know why. I just think it's hilarious. But I digress. So I did start my first book for this vlog. We Contain Multitudes. Who's this by? Sarah Henstra. And I'm really loving it so far. So this novel is in an epistolary format. It's YA. It is about these 2 high schoolers who are assigned this pen pal assignment in their English class. Adam is a senior and Jonathan is a sophomore, and they start writing back and forth to each other. They are very different. Jonathan is kind of like nerdy. He's openly gay. He gets bullied and picked on a lot, whereas Adam is like the star football player. He's a senior. He's very popular. Neither of them are super into writing to each other, but they eventually form a friendship and a closer bond, maybe a little bit more. It is very, very good so far. I'm really absolutely loving it, and I wanted to film this clip really quick so I could go ahead and finish it because it's really that good. And it is honestly successfully filling a little bit of the void in my heart that Young Royals left. I definitely feel like it has a lot of similarities. So first of all, we have that school setting. There's a lot of time spent in school talking about school, and I think we definitely have some character similarities. So Adam definitely feels very Wilhelmish to me, especially because he kind of is like getting in fights. He's a little bit rebellious. He has lots of family issues going on, and he's not quite super confident in himself, whereas Jonathan is definitely giving Simone vibes. He's kind of like the outcast, gets picked on, not super popular, and I definitely feel like their dynamic is similar. They're not quite sure about like having a public open relationship, what that looks like for them, not even really sure of their feelings, their sexualities, all of that kind of stuff. This is definitely helping me, helping my heart not hurt so bad that Young Royals is over and I don't have a season 2 yet. I really like the epistolary format. I feel like when books are written like that, I fly through them a lot quicker. I don't know, it's just something easy to read, and I also love how different the 2 characters' voices are. So I feel like sometimes the author can kind of slip into writing in the way that they write, but she made sure to keep 2 very separate voices and tones for each each character, and I feel like it's just done really well. This book is also, I think, going to be pretty emotional as it goes forward, because like I mentioned, Adam has quite a few family issues, so I think that that's going to become a bigger issue later on, play a bigger role in the plot later on. So I might cry. I will keep you updated. I am kind of predicting that I will, because there's already been a couple moments and I'm like, oh shit, that's heavy. I definitely would be aware of that picking this up. I don't think it's going to end up being a light, cute YA contemporary. It definitely is going to be a little bit heavier hitting, which I feel like is in line with Young Royals as well. They had a lot of difficult topics also. So far this is really well done and I am very much enjoying it. I'm going to go finish it up and I will be back with a final update. Alright, I did finish We Contain Multitudes this weekend. I'm kind of conflicted about it. My problem with this book is that it got really dark. One of the characters in there experiences a lot of abuse from his family, and in turn, he is also kind of violent, and he's kind of violent towards our main love interest. And it is kind of addressed, and they do talk about sending him to therapy, and then he might have PTSD, which I think is good, but I just don't know how healthy of a relationship our two main characters had with one another. I think it was a bit toxic. I had a really big issue with the third act conflict. It was very, very intense. I think things went a little bit too far for me, and I just wasn't sure if our two main characters were really supposed to be together. I wasn't sure if I was feeling it at the end. Obviously, there's like a lot of cute moments, and I did like their relationship and how they interacted with each other, but the relationship to me just felt very young, and the characters felt very young, and that makes sense. They're in high school. One's a sophomore, one's a senior. Like, that was realistic, but also I just don't know if it was a good thing that how it ended. I just was a little iffy about it. But everything else I really loved about this book. I loved the epistolary format like I talked about in the first clip, and I really loved our main characters and I liked their relationship. I'm just not sure if I loved the direction that the ending went in. That's why I'm think I'm gonna settle on like a 4-star rating for this one. It just wasn't a perfect book for me. I do think it had a lot of important topics and I do think it was done really well. I just am a little hesitant to give it a full 5 stars. But in terms of how similar this was to Young Royals and how much it filled the void in my heart that Young Royals left, I would say this is very high up there. Honestly, would probably give it like 4.5 Simones out of 5. And even like all the dramatic stuff that happened at the end, different kind of things that happened in the show, but still like that same level of like drama and anger and like upset. Like, it was very dramatic, and Young Royals, the show, is also very dramatic. So I felt like that kind of was another parallel between it. I do think it had a lot of similar themes and a lot of similar settings, and the characters had similar traits to Young Royals. I think this was definitely a perfect pick, honestly, if you're like looking for books that are similar to Young Royals. Just keep in mind how heavy some of the subject matter is in this one. It's a little bit heavier than even what's in Young Royals. Definitely keep that in mind, but this definitely helped me fill the void. I read this all Saturday. Like, I read the entire book on Saturday. It was really, really good, and it just kept me reading the whole time. I wanted to see what was going on, and I've honestly been kind of a reading slump. This is the first book I've finished in like 3 weeks, so I definitely really enjoyed it. I just was a little bit unsure about the ending, but overall, really good. 4 stars. Definitely helped fill the void, so would recommend. Hi friends, I have another reading update for you. So I'm 50% of the way through A Separate Peace by John Knowles. Not loving this one as much as the first one. It's okay. It definitely has similar vibes to Young Royals. So this one is about these two boys who are friends and they go to this boarding school. I think it's taking place in America either before World War I or before World War II, because there's a lot of talk of like the older boys having to enlist and being sent away to the war. But our main characters are both 16, so they're just like under the age of having to go. They're able to enjoy like a couple more years of school without having to worry about the war per se. And it's just about Jean and Phineas, and they're roommates and have been for a while. It's just a boarding school that they go to, and there's kind of like an unhealthy kind of obsession. Jean is very like enamored with Phineas, and he's also very jealous of him. And where we are in the book, it actually caused Phineas to have a really terrible accident, which is kind of dark. I've always heard that this is like a queer baity kind of book, so I definitely think that there's some kind of maybe like feelings that Jean has for Phineas, but pretty much they just go to school and cause trouble, and like the accident is kind of where I just left off at the halfway point. And I think their relationship's definitely kind of changing at this point. They're kind of like losing their innocence. So I guess this is kind of like a coming of age sort of story. So in that way, and like the boys that are friends at a boarding school way, it's all very similar to Young Royals, but definitely not as good. The writing is it's just just honestly kind of boring. Like, not very much has happened. We're just kind of trucking along. Hopefully the second half will be more interesting now that like something has actually occurred. I don't really know where it's going to go. I can't see this book being more than like a 3-star read at this point. Definitely not loving it, but it's okay. No romance, I don't believe. So that's like the big thing. I'm kind of debating if I want to read boyfriend material in this vlog also, because I feel like the romance is just like what I'm wanting and why I loved Young Royals so much. So I might throw that one in here later on, but I don't know. I've got a lot of things to do, so we'll see. I have like a sneaking suspicion that I was wearing this sweater in the last clip I filmed for this book. I think that was closer to the beginning of the month, so don't worry, I don't wear this like every day. I think it's just a coincidence. I do really like this sweater for work, but you know, whatever. Okay, so I did finish A Separate Piece by John Knowles this morning. This is the first book in this vlog where I'm like not so sure about it. This book was very strange. I feel like it's a book for boys. Like, I don't feel like I really got a lot out of it, and I didn't really see the homoerotic relationship that a lot of people say is there in the subtext. And even the author himself, he said like that wasn't his intention, which doesn't mean it's not there, but at the same time I don't think the characters were aware at all of like having feelings for each other. If they did have feelings, I could see a reading of them being unaware of those feelings and just acting on them subconsciously, but I don't know. There definitely was not any romance or any like explicit suggestion that was what was going on in this book. I mean, for the most part, this is just a coming of age story about male friendships and World War II. It had some similar elements to Young Royals in that it was set at a boarding school. I guess these boys were well off, most likely, but that's really where the similarities end. There wasn't a lot of like interesting things going on in this. This definitely, I would say, did not fill any of the void that was left in my heart when I finished Young Royals. There was not really any drama that I cared about. I mean, I guess the drama between Jean and Phineas, but it wasn't that interesting to me. And the war drama, like, it was just a not very interesting book to me. So I think I probably would give this 2.5 stars. There's nothing terribly wrong with it. The writing was fine. It kind of made me nostalgic for books that I read when I was younger. This is definitely probably could be considered like a middle grade book or a YA book, because it's definitely written younger, like not younger, but there's not very many words on a page. So I don't know, just the way it read kind of felt like it was like middle grade or young adult. I don't know. On paper, I feel like this one made sense to read in this vlog, but in actuality, probably wouldn't recommend. And definitely wouldn't recommend if you're reading it for the same purpose that I was. So glad that I read it. It's a coming of age classic, but didn't get a lot out of it, and giving it 2.5 stars. Alright, on to the next. I have started Ace of Spades. I'm about 50% of the way through. Been listening to the audio. Y'all, I'm shook. This book is so freaking good. Oh my god, it's really, really good. I don't know why I've been sleeping on this book. I started it a while ago and I was loving it when I started it, but I just, like, other things came up and I put it to the side, and I'm so mad at myself because this is gonna be like a 5-star book. I love it so much so far. There are these 2 students at this fancy private school who are under attack by this anonymous texter in their school who is releasing dirt and private information about them and just kind of ruining their reputations, just not being very nice. Both of these students are Black, so I do kind of have a feeling that that is one of the reasons. One of our main characters, Devon, is very hesitant to say that it's race related, but I do believe that that's the direction that this story is going to go in. Overall, this book has the tone of a thriller. The main premise is like trying to figure out who is sending these messages and why these messages are being sent. And so there is this tension and paranoia, which are both just excellently done, and I just feel them so deeply when I'm reading. When I'm reading this book, I don't want to stop reading it. I wanted to film this update right away because I want to keep listening to it tonight. I might even finish it. I don't know. It's so freaking good. It definitely is focused on our 2 main characters. So we get point of view from Devon, who is a gay Black kid. He is trying to get into Juilliard. He really loves music. He comes from kind of a rough neighborhood. Then we're also following Chiamaka. She is very well off, one of the richest girls in school. She's also very popular. She's very like driven and ambitious and wants what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it or demand it. So she is a super interesting character. She also has lots of dirt that happened in her life. So but I really love both both of our main characters. I love both of their points of view pretty much equally. They're super interesting. I'm just having a lot of fun reading this book. It's so good. And it definitely is reminiscent of Young Royals in ways that I'm really liking. There is some romance, particularly between Devon and this new boy Terrell. There's like a little something building. I feel like Chiyamaka and her friend Belle are kind of like, maybe something's going on there too. I don't really know yet. So there's definitely elements of romance. The private school thing is there with the rich kids and the rich kid drama. Somebody releasing secrets about somebody else. That is definitely a major plot point in Young Royals and is the main plot point of this book. Also, there's an element of like girls supporting girls in this book, which I really love and which I also noticed in Young Royals. The only like major difference is there's no royalty in this book, although there are rich people, so I feel like same thing. And then the tone of Young Royals is more drama, whereas this is more thriller. Does have a lot of drama, but it definitely is kind of like edge of your seat kind of deal. So I definitely am getting Young Royals vibes from this. So I am living for it and I am so excited to finish this book. I think it'll be 5 stars. I absolutely love it. Hello friends. So this weekend I did finish Ace of Spades. I loved this. This is honestly going to be one of my favorite books of the year. Like, it was so good. If you haven't read it yet, you need to read it right now. It was so freaking good. So I pretty much explained what was going on in the first clip that I filmed, updating you on my progress in this book, and I don't really want to talk too much more about it because I don't want to spoil anything. Let me just tell you, this book was excellent from beginning to end. I was on the edge of my seat until the very end. Definitely was feeling like the paranoia and stress that our main characters were feeling, not knowing who was threatening them. So I just think the writing and the tone and everything was just immaculately done. Like, this was just such a very well-crafted book with excellent characters, excellent plotting, excellent pacing. I was kept engaged the entire time, and this will definitely be on my favorites list of the year so far. Definitely loved this one. Would really very much recommend. Please read it if you haven't. And I definitely think that it did fulfill quite a bit of the void in my heart that Young Royals did. I mean, for one, like Young Royals, this was absolutely like unputdownable. Every time I wasn't listening to it, I listened to the audiobook. I wanted to get back into the story, and that was just like Young Royals. It was just like you had to binge it. There was no other way to consume it, and this book was the same way. Also, what I talked about in the first clip, the private school, the rich characters. One of the characters is not as well off as the others, and he's like a scholarship kid, kind of struggling. I did say in the first clip that there was kind of like girl support girls going on, which not quite sure if that was actually true, but there were a lot of strong female characters in this book as there were in Young Royals, so I feel like that can still kind of be a parallel. There definitely wasn't the romance in this book like there was in Young Royals. There was a little bit of romance in it, but it definitely took like a back seat to everything else that was going on, where all in Young Royals the romance was pretty much front and center. So that was a little different, and honestly that is what created the biggest void in my heart. So without that, I don't know how strongly this filled the void, but it definitely was an excellent read and had very similar dark academia elements, which I really enjoyed. So I think if you like one, you would like the other, most likely. And I definitely am very happy with this pick because I really enjoyed it, and I think it really had some very similar elements. Also, like the whole blackmail text messaging thing was also a major element in both stories. So lots of good stuff in this book. I really loved it, and I'm so glad I finally read it because it's like perfect, amazing, fantastic, wonderful, and I loved it. Alright, it has been literal months since I have updated this vlog, but I am bringing her back from the dead. And here with an update on my next book. So I did start If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. This is a YA contemporary set in this like prestigious New England boarding school. We have this cast of 4 main characters. So we're mainly getting the perspectives of Sage and Charlie, and Sage and Charlie have always been best friends. They have this really close relationship, so much so that like everyone around them thinks they're in love with each other, but they are actually not in love with each other. They are literally just friends. And it's a little bit even more complicated than that because Sage is actually falling for Charlie's twin brother, Nick. Charlie really does not want Sage and Nick to be together because he thinks Sage will break Nick's heart. He's very protective of his brother, and Sage is kind of very much not someone who likes to get into relationships because her parents went through a divorce as a child, so she doesn't really believe in love. So that's another reason why Charlie doesn't want her and Nick to be together. He just thinks they won't work. And then Charlie is dealing with shit of his own because he has repressed for a really long time that he has feelings for boys, and then he starts to fall for this new kid, Luke, at school. These like long repressed feelings are getting drug up, and he doesn't really know what to do or where to go from here. And right now I'm 50% of the way through this book, and I have complicated feelings about about it. So I really do like both of our main characters, Sage and Charlie. Part of me wants to say that I wish I had read this book when I was younger, because I feel like as like an older teenager, someone going into college, this book would have related to me. Like I would have related to this book a lot. But also I'm kind of glad that I'm reading it now when I'm older, because I feel like Sage's character would have annoyed me when I was younger, but I understand her a lot and appreciate her now. Sage is kind of that like happy-go-lucky, sunshiny, like bubbly, over-the-top kind of person. And reading about her now, I really like her and I really like her character, but I think past me probably wouldn't have. So that's a good thing. But also I feel like in terms of Charlie, what he's going through and what he's struggling with, and he is got this whole storyline too where he's not sure where he wants to go to college. He really wants something different than what his parents expect of him, and all of this like academic pressure and athletic pressure that he's put on himself is really kind of catching up with him. I feel like I would have related to those things a lot as like a younger person who is still in school. But overall, I am really enjoying this. I really particularly like Charlie and Luke's interactions. Sage and Luke are also friends and I really like their interactions. I really like Sage and Charlie together. And I do like Sage and her love interest Nick, Charlie's brother, but their relationship and like the conflict in their relationship is so contrived that it's almost painful to read. Like Sage keeps making excuses for why she wants to keep them a secret, and like she's just not talking to Nick nor Charlie about the issues and feelings she's having. So they were both like mad at her because she's just not expressing what she's feeling and what she wants. And it's just kind of frustrating to read about. Charlie is also kind of frustrating to read about because I don't understand yet, and it might come to light, exactly what his motivations are for what he's doing. Because like he very clearly like flirts with Luke and like likes Luke, but every time he's like called on it or questioned about it, he clams up, which like I understand, but it's still frustrating to read about because it's even just when like him and Luke are alone together. And like what's the motivation for like not telling Luke how you feel about him? And it also breaks my fucking heart, to be honest. It makes me very sad, but because I understand, but it's still frustrating to read about, you know? Overall, I'm liking it so far. You are very much just like thrown into the action, which is a little disorienting at first, especially because there's so many characters. It's not too difficult to figure out like what's going on, and I really do enjoy it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think the second half I flipped through a little bit to kind of figure out, especially like what Sage and Nick were gonna do, because their relationship is just stressing me out. And I think it's gonna continue to stress me out for quite a while longer, but hopefully I can't imagine this doesn't have a happily ever after, so I'm excited to see where all of our characters end up. And so far, I do get Young Royals vibes, but this is a lot less gritty, and the stakes aren't as high. We have very similar elements: the boarding school element, the rich kid drama problems. They all like play hockey and lacrosse and like all that stuff, and even like the friendship groups and dynamics are similar, and like the whole struggling with coming out, coming to terms with this relationship and how you feel about another person that you feel like you shouldn't feel that way about them. All very similar, but all presented in a lot lighter tone. I feel like this would definitely be a good look if you are too emotionally devastated by Young Royals to pick up something just as gritty. This one would be a good bet. It's definitely not as dark. It's light and fun. It's a contemporary, YA contemporary, but it definitely has similar elements if those are things you're looking for. So I'm going to keep reading and I will let you know how I feel once I am 100% done with this book. Hello, so I wanted to film a quick update. So it has been, I don't even know, like 2 or 3 weeks probably since I finished If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I overall really enjoyed it. A lot of my thoughts from my 50% update stayed the same throughout the second half of the book. I continued to feel like Nick and Charlie's relationship drama was a bit contrived, didn't make a lot of sense, was a little tired. It was also drawn out too long for what it was, but I did like them as characters and I liked them together. I didn't have any like major issues with them. I felt like the conflict, like keeping them apart, could have been stronger. I said Nick and Charlie, but I meant Nick and Sage. And then on the other hand, Charlie and his relationship with, God, I don't remember his name. Anyway, Charlie's relationship ended up being cute. I really preferred reading Charlie's chapters over Sage's chapters, just because I thought what was happening in Charlie's life was a little bit more interesting to read about than Sage's contrived relationship drama. I connected a lot more to him than I did to Sage, but there was something that happened in the second half of the book. I don't feel like this is a spoiler because I feel like this is something some people might want to know going into the story. There is kind of this underlying forced coming out narrative. A lot of the people in his life are forcing Charlie to come out, saying he's going to be happier coming out, like no one will care, like he should just do it. But Charlie has like been repressing his sexuality for so long. It's unfair for anyone to be forced out of the closet, but Charlie especially, because it was all very new to him. He had like just barely admitted it to himself, and I think everyone around him didn't understand how much he's like struggling with that. I never really like a forced coming out narrative. It seems to pop up quite a bit in like YA and stuff, and I think the message is supposed to be who you are, the people who love you will accept you, which is all well and great if you're in a safe environment, which luckily Charlie was, but I just had a little bit of an issue with it. I think it was handled here better than it's been handled in other books that I've read, but it's not something I like, and I wish books would stop doing it. Overall, I really did enjoy this one. It was a cute, light YA contemporary, thus the 4-star rating. It didn't do anything extraordinary or anything that I haven't seen done before, but it was a really fun read, and I definitely saw the parallels between Young Royals. I think the setting is probably the biggest one, as these characters are in this boarding school, so we get that campus setting. They also are like playing posh sports like lacrosse and things, and also with the queer themes and the relationship drama and the friend drama and all of that stuff. Similar to Young Royals, but I think I mentioned this in the previous clip, very different in tone, has similar elements, not exactly the same, didn't quite scratch the itch in the way that I wanted it to, but overall it was a cute, fun read. So now I've also started my final book, A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This is a story set in an all-girls boarding school in New England. It's kind of a witchy boarding school with a dark background. In its history, there were 5 girls that attended this school. 1 was murdered, 4 were blamed, and then the rest of the 4 like died in under mysterious circumstances. There's all this lore at the school like about witchcraft and weird murdery things, which is very different from Young Royals, but I did pick this one because it has that boarding school theme, pushing the dark academia envelope, and it also is queer. So I'm currently at the 50% mark and I'm enjoying it so far. It definitely has some really good vibes that I'm very much enjoying. The boarding school is really cool. It definitely is like a very posh boarding school, kind of like the one in Young Royals. This one's a little bit different as it's more focused kind of on like the arts. Our main character is studying English. All the kids there are like super smart, and it's been super entertaining so far. We're following Felicity, who's our main character. She took a leave of absence the previous year. It was her senior year. She was supposed to finish up her education, but her girlfriend died in a freak accident that Felicity was involved in, and so she took the rest of the semester off to recuperate, and now she's back repeating her senior year to graduate from this school. And Felicity's had a lot of issues and trauma related to the accident. She's had some issues like remembering exactly what happened. There's some weird hinting that maybe she was more at fault than she's letting on or that everyone else knows about. And there's also a lot of implication that the previous year she was really involved in witchcraft and trying to like actually do magic, and that's one of the reasons that tragedy struck around her. And this year she's like determined to stay away from it, but there's this new girl in school. Her and Felicity are drawn to one another, and Felicity is kind of like tumbling a little bit back into the world of magic and that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see where this one is going to go. I've read quite a few reviews that say it goes off the rails after the 50% mark and is just like not as good and a kind of let down in the second half. So I'm interested to see where it goes. I am enjoying it so far. Like I read the first half pretty quickly and thought it was fun. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes, and I will give you an update when I'm finished. Hello, I am here to tell you that I have finally finished A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I'm so happy to be done with this vlog finally. I started filming it so long ago. I've literally watched Young Royals 2 times through since I started it. The second season has also been announced. This is a long time coming, and I don't know if anyone's even gonna be interested in this vlog, but I've had a lot of fun filming it. Back to A Lesson in Vengeance. I'm kind of ending this reading vlog on a fizzle because this book was not really doing it for me. The second half got kind of slow, repetitive, and boring until the very end, and I didn't really like the direction the ending went in. It definitely went very dark, and it went very dark academia, very ruthless, which I wasn't sure totally fit with the YA vibes and the age of the characters, but it was an interesting twist. Overall, I liked this book. I liked the writing. I liked the dark academia vibes. I definitely don't think that this was very Young Royals-esque. It had the boarding school element, the posh kids, rich kids, but it was definitely more like academic focused than like Young Royals is. And also the relationships weren't quite as interesting. They were definitely darker. There is kind of a romance in here, but it doesn't really feel like a romance. So this was definitely missing the Young Royals-esque spark that I was looking for in books on this list. But overall, it was a fun read. I'm giving it 3 stars. It was very average. It wasn't a standout read for me, but I did enjoy elements of it for sure. And that is the final book for this video. Hopefully reading vlogs that I start in 2022 don't take this long because this was a little ridiculous. But I'm gonna kind of like quickly wrap up everything I read in this vlog and let you know my final thoughts. So the first book I read was We Contain Multitudes. I really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely thought that this scratched the romance part of the itch that I was missing after having finished Young Royals. I really liked the story up until like the ending part, and then I didn't really love some of the characters' actions at the end, so that's why this got 4 stars instead of 5. But it definitely had a lot of similar elements. The only thing that was missing was like the posh boarding school royalty vibes. So a lot of it but it had the romance, the friendship relationships, the sexuality, dealing with sexuality issues and coming out. So I did think this was a pretty good first pick for this vlog. I did enjoy it. The next book I read was Ace of Spades. This book I absolutely loved. This was definitely my favorite book that I read in this reading vlog, and honestly, probably the most similar to Young Royals as well. This like had the romance elements, had the sexuality elements, the posh school elements. It also had like a queen bee, head girl, different friendships and relationships, and it was great. It also had like the blackmailing aspect, which was a big plot in Young Royals. I definitely, if you loved Young Royals, you would absolutely love Ace of Spades. They are so similar. The most similar recommendation, like if you like this, you'll like this. They're like perfect complements to each other. I loved this book. This was a 5-star read. It was one of my favorite books that I read in 2021. I loved it. Would definitely recommend if you haven't read it already. In a very different vein, the next book I read was A Separate Piece by John Knowles. This is kind of like a classic. I did not like this book at all. I gave it 2 stars. This is my least favorite book that I read for this reading vlog for sure. I wish I hadn't read it. It didn't have very much Young Royal vibes. It took place at a boys boarding school. That was about it, where the similarities lied. It didn't have like any of the social issues or social commentary. It didn't have fun relationships, no romance. Really nothing good. I didn't like this book at all. I gave it 2 stars. Okay. And then the next book I read fairly recently, and that was If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. This one definitely had Young Royals vibes, just a little bit lighter and fluffier. I really enjoyed this one and I gave it 4 stars. I really liked the setting. It was set in a boarding school. It was very much like rich people problems kind of deal. There was a fun love square going on. There was really good friendships, some cute romance, some dealing with sexuality issues and coming out. So I definitely think this is a pretty good recommendation too. If you liked Young Royals, you'll probably like If We Were Us. And then obviously the last book, A Lesson in Vengeance. This was a very middle of the road book for me. I gave it 3 stars. It was kind of boring and kind of drug out. It had fun dark academia vibes, but that wasn't exactly what I was going for in this vlog. Kind of. I feel like I can't decide if Young Royals is dark academia or not. It's not in the sense of like dark academia. It just takes place in a school and has dark themes, and it's definitely different than A Lesson in Vengeance, which is like a master class in dark academia, so not quite the vibes, but it was still a fun enough read. 3 stars, pretty average. So obviously my favorite book that I read for this video was probably Ace of Spades. Next was probably We Contain Multitudes, and then I would probably put If We Were Us, A Lesson in Vengeance, and A Separate Piece. So that's my little ranking if you were curious. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If there's any other books you would recommend for people who like Young Royals, please let me know down below. I would definitely love to check them out and read them, so let a girl know. But yeah, if you want to see more similar content from me, definitely make sure to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram. I am pretty active over there. You can see what I'm reading on the day to day. And yeah, I think that'll be all for me today. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.